Apple Creator Studio is out today. It's their new subscription model for their Pro apps like Final Cut and Logic, and also their iWork apps like Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. I've been using it for the past 2 weeks, editing videos, making thumbnails, creating Keynote presentations, and a ton more. And there's some great new features like transcript search in Final Cut, Chord ID in Logic, and Keynote will even create a slide presentation out of a text outline. But after using it for a couple weeks, I do have some critiques, and some issues that persisted all the way up to the launch. So I want to start by highlighting some of the great new features and things like Final Cut, Logic Pro, Pixelmator, and Keynote, then share where I think some improvement needs to be made, especially now that this is a subscription model for a lot of the apps, the kinds of apps Creator Studio is still missing, and at the end of this video, I'll go into if it's worth the subscription pricing, especially if you already own the Pro apps. Should you go with the one-time purchase, and try to share an overarching theory about Apple's creative apps that go all the way back to Final Cut Express. First up, let's look at the new version of Final Cut, which is now on version 12. I've edited a number of videos in this new version, like my 15 continuity tips video, and there's 3 really great new features. First is beat detection. If you add a music track like background audio here at the intro of my video, you can now click the beat detection tool, which is right here. It's actually going to show you the lines of where the beats in the music are. So if you wanted to line up the cuts in your video to the music, you can actually just see the lines right there in your timeline. And then as you drag the in and out points of a clip, you'll see they'll actually snap to each of those beat lines. Really cool, especially if you're doing high-paced stuff or maybe short-form video. There's also a bunch of new titles, generators, and transitions in this new version of Final Cut. Now I'll go more into the price differences at the end of the video, but if you have the one-time purchase of Final Cut, even if you bought it years ago, you do get all these new features, including the generators and titles. So if you go over to the generators and titles here, there's a whole section just called New, and you'll see all the different styles. There's list type items that animate in and out. They also have headlines and titles for animating those in, even working with your footage. Also some new animated lower thirds, which are pretty cool. And there's things like animated shapes like chevrons and arrows, some nice looking countdown timers or percentages. So these are all great additions. Plus over here in the transition menu all the way on the right, some new transitions to play with. I still use a lot of transitions and titles from Motion VFX, but nice to have Final Cut build some more in by default. Now, probably the biggest feature, and one you would use, especially if you edit video podcasts in Final Cut, is transcript search. So here in this event, I have our latest episode of Primary Technology. That's my tech podcast, listen above and links down below. And now you can actually search the transcript of this entire recording. So this was about an hour, 20-minute video, but I can search for something like humane, because I did mention the Humane AI pin in light of the Apple pin. And you can do a visual search for an actual object or thing in the footage, or search via transcript. You can also say includes or is related to, and now I have 5 different search results where we mention that word. If I play this back. If you're not watching it, I'm wearing an Apple hoodie that I got at Apple Park, and I'm now wearing the Humane AI pin. So that's where I mentioned the Humane AI pin. You can also change the transcript search to is related to, and you can search the visuals. So if I search for something like Netflix, well, here's a part of the video where Netflix actually appears on screen. It's text on an image. And this is not because I said Netflix, but this is because the word actually appears visually. So that transcript and visual search is great. You'll also see that when you go to import a video under the Analyze Audio, you'll see the transcribe checkbox right here. And every time you import video footage, in addition to importing and transcoding, depending on how you have Final Cut set, once it's imported, if you expand the background task, you'll see that it is transcribing all of those video clips that you import. So Final Cut now has transcripts for all your video footage, but I want a lot more accessible via that transcript, and we'll get to that in a second. Now, a lot of these features are also coming to Final Cut here on the iPad, but one that's specific to iPod is the Montage Maker. And so right here, I have a bunch of video clips that I captured at CES, and once you import them into a project here on your iPad, you can choose Create Montage. Now I had this create a vertical reel, and you can see it put all the video clips together. Now as you can see, these clips are a mix of both vertical and horizontal, but on these horizontal clips, I can do auto crop, both photo and video auto crops. It'll go through all the clips that I added to this montage. And now if I play this montage back, whether the original clip was vertical or horizontal, it's gonna auto crop hopefully to the action of the scene. So that was a horizontal clip at first. This one was native vertically. This one was another horizontal clip that now is auto cropped. So the entire project is now cropped for a reel. You can then rearrange, change the speed or aspect ratio, and a bunch of other stuff. If you're doing like travel vlog style content, or you just want to make a highlight reel from an event, I think this montage maker is pretty cool. Then you can add this to the timeline, and that entire montage is placed as separate clips, and you can go on and edit it further. Now we're going to come back to Final Cut in my critique section, especially about that transcript feature, but let's keep going on the new features in Keynote. I recently spoke at PodFest, and I made my entire Keynote presentation in the new version of Keynote. And there are some pretty cool features, especially for images. So I was talking about video podcasting as you do, and let's say I didn't have an image for this slide. Well, there's now a new content hub, and that's available in Keynote, Pages, and Numbers. It's actually this symbol right here, and if I go to the content hub, I can search for a bunch of high quality images, or I can use Apple Intelligence through ChatGPT to just create whatever image I want. But let's search first. If I just search for podcast, I have a bunch of images. Some of these are real photos, and so if I wanted to use that, I can just click it, and now that's inserted into my slide. Honestly, really convenient rather than having to go to a website, download some royalty-free images, put them in the Keynote. It's all right here in the Content Hub. And you can then use Apple Intelligence to just generate whatever you want. Maybe I want an illustration style image. You can choose how you want the view to be. I'll choose a 45-degree angle, square, and you'll see the little fine print. This is powered by OpenAI. So when you ask it to generate an image, it's going to ChatGPT. I asked it for a podcast microphone on a desk with a laptop in the background, so let's see how it does. Not bad. I did ask it to be like illustration style. I can go in and further adjust the images here or even describe image edits with just a prompt, but I'll just insert the image. I can reframe it. So that ability to either use high quality images from the Content Hub or generate them out of whole cloth, pretty cool. Now, before I get to some of my critiques of Creator Studio, let me tell you about one other thing I love, which is today's sponsor. This is MoFT's new smart all-in-one wallet with Find My. This is MoFT's new hyper-thin MagSafe wallet with Find My, plays a sound up to 70 decibels, and it's even wirelessly rechargeable. Simply add it to the Find My app like you're adding a new item, and like other Find My accessories, you'll be able to see it on the map anywhere in the world, and even have it play that sound. Actually has a unique little chime, which I like. It's available today on Apple.com, and it's the only third-party trackable wallet you'll find through Apple. And look how super thin that is. This is the first MagSafe wallet that's thin enough where I actually want to keep it on the back of my phone. This way I can use it as a grip, and you can easily slide 2 cards in there like your driver's license and Apple Card, and still remain super thin. Now the battery lasts up to 6 months, but if you ever need to charge it, you can just wirelessly charge it by connecting to either a MagSafe battery or any MagSafe puck, and your wallet is charging that easily. But one of my favorite things about the MoFT wallets is the various stands and grips. So you can have your phone in portrait mode like that, put it on its side to watch a video like one of my YouTube videos, or my preference, flip it around into floating mode, and now you can set your iPhone down so it's elevated, watch that video on your lunch break, and if you have a Pro Max size phone like mine, put your 2 fingers in there like a grip. It really does everything, and it's super secure. Those magnets are going to be holding onto your phone, and I can do this even with no case on it, and that magnet is holding onto the phone no problem. And just to test, I'll put Apple's tech woven case on the back of my phone. Here's the MoFT wallet, and it's still holding strong. And if you need to get a card out of the wallet, it's super easy to do that. I just push up, easily slides out, and I'm ready to go. Now that it has built-in Find My, the MoFT MagSafe wallet has been my go-to, and because it's so thin, I can keep it on here all the time. So you can get MoFT's smart all-in-one wallet stand right now from Apple.com. I'll put that link down in the video description. And my thanks to MoFT for sponsoring this video. Another good AI feature here in Keynote is it can generate presenter notes based on your slide's content. So in addition to the image generator, which is right there in the toolbar, I'll click this symbol, which is Generate Presenter Notes. It's going to ask if you can send this information to OpenAI. Again, this is not Apple Intelligence per se. This is all going to ChatGPT. I'll just choose Always Allow. It's going to look at the contents of the slide and then generate the presenter notes for me. And you can have it do it for the entire presentation. And you can see these presenter notes are not exactly the text that are on the slide. Like it says nearly half of Gen Z prefer listening on YouTube, whereas on the slide it says 46%. But if I was doing a spoken presentation, this is probably what I would say. So now I have some presenter show notes. There's another feature here where you can ask Keynote to automatically fix styling issues that are on a slide. Even if I overlap a bunch of titles and images, I haven't gotten it to actually suggest cleanup, so I'll keep you posted. But let's say you don't have a presentation, but you do have an outline. Let's actually create a new project here in Keynote, and there are actually a bunch of new templates that are available specifically if you subscribe to Creator Studio. So this here in the premium section, all these templates are only available when you subscribe. I'll go with this Cyber Stark theme, and here this is a brand new presentation, but I can use this last tool here in the toolbar to give it an overview and a full outline of my talk, and it's going to generate slides for me. So I'm going to give Keynote like a 7-point outline that is just plain text, click Generate. It's going to think for a little while and then create a slide for every point that I had in that outline. You can actually see it creating the slides there in the left-hand sidebar. And I've done this a few times. You see now it's already done. I've had some mixed results. It will take information from my outline and put them on a slide. We'll try to follow the template. Some slides are more useful than others, but it at least gives you a starting point if all you have is an outline. Now, one of the things I had hoped is that it would generate visualizations if I had that in my outline. And as you can see, I tried putting that here like in data visualization, but it won't do it in that whole presentation generator. If I go back to the image generator, and for this one I'll choose pencil style again, I'll do that 45-degree angle, square aspect ratio, and in the describe this image, I'm going to put all the information for the visualization like percentages and sources, and let's see what it does. And honestly, it did a pretty good job of creating that visualization. To compare, I will say if you ask something like ChatGPT or Gemini to do the same exact thing, it does do it way faster. But the fact that you can do this right here in Keynote and then insert it, it is pretty high quality, and then I can move this around and drag it. That's pretty cool. Create those visualizations just from a text prompt. I'm not going to go into pages and numbers really in this video, but there are those premium templates that are just for Creator Studio subscribers like there are in Keynote. And before I get to Pixelmator, one really cool feature that's now in Logic Pro, which I'm not in Logic a ton. I know my son really loves Logic on the iPad for building tracks. Now, whenever you drag an audio file into a Logic project, you can right-click that audio file, go down to Chords, and then Analyze Chords. You have to give it a couple seconds, and then you'll actually see an entire track telling you the chord changes of that track. And here, if I zoom in, you'll see the chord changes showing underneath that track right here. And from what I tested, it's pretty accurate. And now let's look at Pixelmator. Now I actually have the old version of Pixelmator open up next to the new version so you can see some of the differences. We do have an entirely new liquid glass redesign. Many of the tools are in the same place. There are a couple changes which we'll get to in the critique section, but the actual new feature here is the warp tool. So for instance, I have this shortcut kind of floating around the thumbnail. In the old version of Pixelmator, when you selected a layer, you got transform, and then you can still do the skew and perspective, but no warp. Now, if I go to the warp tool in the new version of Pixelmator, there's lots of different options here like cylinder, different arches, wave, warps, and then you can choose the severity, intensity, all that kind of stuff. So pretty cool, but where this really comes in handy is if you're gonna do something like merch. If I were to create a new project here in the new Pixelmator, there's a bunch of templates and you can do things like create social media posts, things like that. But if you go to the mockup section here when you're creating a new project, you can choose from all of these different merch options. And here where you see the logos on the shirts, hoodies, or even bags, these are placeholders that you can swap with one of your images. So here I opened the hoodie markup, and here you have the simple layers, and I can simply replace this image with one of my own, and it will make it warp to the actual hoodie. I'll choose something from my shortcuts merch, and now you can see it's warped onto the hoodie. That's pretty cool. Let's do one with even more texture, like this shirt that's on the rock. I can click the plus icon, replace, and there we go, has my shortcuts now on the shirt. If you do merch, that warp tool is gonna be really useful. Now onto places I think could use improvement. Going back to Pixelmator, I'm gonna nitpick a couple things here. All the icons here on the right-hand side have kind of gotten these little 3 dots to show you there's more to click there. And I think it looks a little busy in the right-hand column as opposed to the old style where there was just the tiny little arrow in the corner. Maybe it's a preference thing. That also goes to how there's an icon in many of the different menu options now across macOS. But one of the other things is when you create a layer, if I click the plus icon here in the new version of Pixelmator, I have to choose the kind of layer I want to make, where in the old version of Pixelmator, I could just click the plus icon and a new layer was created immediately. I could use the keyboard shortcut as well. It's just a behavior change that, depending on how you use it, might slow you down just a little bit at first. But where I really ran into the issue was Pixelmator Pro on iPad. Now, this is the first time the full Pixelmator Pro application is on iPad, but when you open the new version, one of the features is supposed to be continuously working on the same project across Mac and iPad. Well, I found you can open some of the same files, both on the Mac and the iPad, but when I try to open things like my thumbnail project, like I'll try to open the Primary Tech podcast thumbnail, I get this error a lot. If something is too big, and I can't tell if it's because there's too many layers or because the actual resolution, it won't let me open the same file that I work on the Mac. When I choose duplicate and resize, it does make it smaller than 3000 pixels, and that might be the limitation. Even the Pixelmator file that I used to create the episode artwork for Primary Technology, I get the same error, and this one is a 3000 by 3000 pixel wide image, but Pixelmator Pro on iPad can't seem to open it. Now, if I let it do that duplicate and resize, then I can open it. I still can see a lot of my layers here in Pixelmator on iPad, but if I go to the image setup and image size, you'll see it decrease the size to 2365 pixels square. So if you work on files bigger than 3000 pixels in either direction, you might not be able to open them in Pixelmator Pro on iPad, which is unfortunate. Otherwise, Pixelmator Pro on iPad is really nice. And it doesn't seem that layer number is an issue because you can see all these layers here in this Pixelmator document. But one of the things I do is copy layer styles, which you can do right here on iPad. I can just copy that. You get all the little contextual menus that you would like on the Mac. I can go to styles, copy the style and apply it to other layers. Pixelmator on the iPad would be really great if I could edit these same files, the thumbnails specifically, on my Mac that I do on my iPad. So hopefully that'll come in an update soon. Keep in mind, this is the M5 iPad Pro with 2 terabytes. So it's basically more powerful than my M4 MacBook Air, which can open all those same Pixelmator files, no problem. Also, going back to Keynote, while it does pretty good at those data visualization charts, there were times I would give it some text to create a pie graph or a bar chart, and it would get the percentages wrong. It gets it correct more often than not, which is nice. Like this bar graph is actually correct, and you have a nice little 3D bar graph with the correct labels on the x-axis. So sometimes it takes a while, but again, if you just want to work specifically in Keynote, it will get the job done. I think the place where I would like to see the most improvement is actually in Final Cut. So back in Final Cut, having that transcript search and even the visual search, those are great. The problem is I can't access that transcript and actually just browse it, or at least view the few paragraphs of context when I search for something. This time let's search for Netflix. I'm looking for transcript results, and here I have a bunch of clips, but I'm gonna have to listen to each of these clips to see what they are actually saying. There's no way to actually look at just the text portion of these clips. I would love a pop-out window or something to just show me the transcript of these moments so I don't have to listen to each one to choose the clip that I want. Also, since Apple is transcribing the entire video clip and transcribing every piece of video that you import, it'd be really nice if I could just see the full transcript of a video somewhere here in Final Cut, and also use that transcript to create animated captions. Right now, my process is I create vertical reels in Final Cut, I edit everything there, but then I have to bring it into the Edits app on my iPhone just to add the animated captions. Now, Final Cut lets you add captions, and if you wanted to, you can burn them into the video to make them permanent, but it's really so you can export those captions and maybe use it in YouTube and like an SRT format, but you can't make animated captions still in Final Cut. Pretty much every other app lets you do this, CapCut, the Edits app, and tons of services like Opus Clip and Riverside. Like, I would love to skip the step of airdropping that vertical video to my iPhone, importing it here in the Edits app, and literally just clicking the caption button. This way I can have those animated captions here on my video. Apple talks about this transcript search being especially useful for video podcasters. Well, I edit the video version of Primary Technology in Riverside, and having the entire transcript just scrollable, being able to browse and skim it, and then being able to search it. So when I search for something like Netflix, I can go through all the search results and I can instantly see the context in which we're talking about it. This way I don't have to listen to the full clip, try to find the exact moment I want. So I would love something like this. Just give me a visual of the transcript in Final Cut. Let me be able to maybe select the text, which actually selects that portion of the clip. That plus the animated captions, I think would make Final Cut an enticing tool for something like video podcasts and clips. But overall, while we got some new features and Pixelmator Pro on iPad, is Creator Studio worth it? Now, if you've already purchased Final Cut, Logic Pro, Mainstage, you get all these features in those one-time purchased apps. They'll update on your Mac right now. You don't have to subscribe to Creator Studio. But the Apple Intelligence features and things like Keynote, Pages, and Numbers, basically the features with the little magic stars on them, those features are only available if you subscribe. Creator Studio is $12.99 a month or $129 a year here in the US. But the education pricing is incredibly reasonable at $299 a month or $29 a year. But let's answer the question, who is this for, and should you jump to the subscription if you already own the apps? Now, in the future, that question might become harder to answer if Apple starts adding features to Logic and Final Cut that are only part of the Creator Studio subscription. That is not the case right now. You don't get any less features with the one-time purchase Mac apps. All of the iPad apps, like Final Cut and Logic have been up until now, those are subscription only. So if you want Pixelmator Pro on the iPad, only way to do that is the Creator Studio subscription. Now, if you're like me and you already purchased Final Cut and Pixelmator, and maybe you don't really need the Apple Intelligence features in the iWork suite, then maybe it doesn't pay to jump on that subscription just yet. I think for my particular use cases, and the fact that I can't open my Pixelmator documents on the iPad yet, I'm not going to jump on the subscription. But if you were using iMovie and GarageBand, or you've never tried the Pro apps like Final Cut and Logic, you can literally do them for a free trial, and if you have an education discount, pay as little as $3 a month for those apps. That is a pretty incredible deal. So those of you who have an established workflow and aren't enticed by those Apple Intelligence iWork features, maybe stick with the one-time purchase apps. But if you've never tried these apps before, or maybe you want to try it for a couple months and then cancel that subscription, it's nice that the Creator Studio now gives you that option. Now, back when I was in college, the Creator Studio subscription would have been an incredible deal. I bought my first Mac in 2005, and if I had wanted to try and use Final Cut Studio, which included Soundtrack Pro, Motion 2, and DVD Studio Pro 4, was $1,300. That was nowhere near in my budget. Now, a couple years later, Apple released Final Cut Express 4 and lowered the price from $300 to $200. And that was my entry point in pro video editing. I had used iMovie for those first couple years of having my G4 PowerBook 12-inch. I bought Final Cut Express, this book, and the software, and then I taught myself everything I needed to edit in Final Cut Express. And I used Final Cut Express until Final Cut 10 came out. I bought that for $300, and I've been using it ever since. Now, for someone who has hit the limits of iMovie and GarageBand, and now they're looking at either the Adobe Creative Suite, even though they've never used those apps and might not be a pro creator just yet, that compared to Creator Studio looks like a great deal. Now, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but if you went for the Creative Cloud Pro subscription, that's $105 a month, or if you pay for the year or commit to the year, you do get a deal all the way down to $42 a month. And of course, you get a ton of other apps like InDesign and Dreamweaver, but you get industry standards like Premiere Pro, Illustrator, After Effects. You do get all of that. But if you're just getting into video editing and you're coming from iMovie or CapCut, even just to get Premiere from Adobe, it's $23 a month if you commit to a year, or $35 every month. Creator Studio compared to a single app from Adobe is a really good deal. So I think for college me, who couldn't afford Final Cut Studio and went Final Cut Express, that's who Creator Studio is for. And another huge point is you can share the Creator Studio subscription across your family. So in my family, if I do pay for it, that means my son, who uses Logic Pro on his iPad all the time, now gets access to Pixelmator Pro to maybe make album artwork, Final Cut Pro on the iPad to maybe make reels, and it's shared up to 6 people, whereas the Adobe Creative Suite, that pricing is usually 1 per seat. So bottom line, for those of us that have used Final Cut and Logic for years and did the one-time purchase, probably not a ton of reasons to go to that Creator Studio subscription unless you want to share it with your family, maybe try some of the other apps you haven't tried yet, or you really love working from iPad and want Pixelmator Pro and Final Cut there. If you're upgrading from iMovie and GarageBand, or you're a student, I think Creator Studio is a great deal, and you can always try it for a couple months, cancel it, re-sign up later. You have that flexibility with the subscription as opposed to a one-time purchase. And the one-time purchases are not going away, to be clear. So if you want to buy Final Cut Pro for $300 next week and just keep using that, that's available to you too on the Mac. Now, the one missing piece of Creator Studio is a high-quality photo editor. In the rare instance that I need to really do some photo editing, take the raw images off an SD card and edit them maybe on my iPad, I still love Lightroom for that. Creator Studio would have been a great opportunity to revive the Aperture name and bring that app back both for the Mac and the iPad, but we didn't get that. So if photography is your main thing, that is a reason to consider Lightroom in the Adobe suite or maybe some of the Affinity apps. And Apple, if you're listening, it's not too late. Creator Studio version 2, maybe bring back Aperture or something like it. When Apple acquired Pixelmator, they did also get the Photomator app, which is going to be living in limbo, it seems. Although the Creator Studio subscription is not going to include Photomator, and it's either $8 a month or $30 a year. That's almost the cost of a whole Creator Studio subscription. And while Apple Photos is fine for a lot of things, it would be really nice to have an Apple Pro photo editor application once again. And as far as my workflows, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be using that transcript search since I still edit my video podcasts in Riverside. But the Pixelmator Warp tool and maybe designing some merch, that might be the one new feature that I actually use on a regular basis. But because I purchased Pixelmator Pro years ago, I should be getting that even without going to the Creator Studio subscription. So I hope that was useful to you. If you have any questions about Creator Studio, any of the apps or features, let me know down in the comments. And if you'd like me to cover any of those individual apps in depth, which I kind of covered most of the new features, if you want to see more of the Apple Intelligence features, let me know in the comments. But get subscribed. We have some exciting iOS updates coming very soon. A lot of the rumors say 26.4 is going to bring the Apple Intelligence something, maybe with Gemini. So I'm going to be covering it right here on the channel. Also, if you wanted to see that 15 continuity tips, which I edited in the new version of Final Cut and thumbnail was made in the new version of Pixelmator Pro, I'll put that video right up here. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And of course, lots of shortcuts content here on the channel. Might be designing new shortcuts merch using that Warp tool. I'll put my last shortcuts video right up here. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.